Hey everybody, welcome to a writing video. Shirley Jackson is one of my favorite authors of all time, and this article, which was so underappreciated when I posted it on Twitter yesterday, it didn't get a single like until I posted a few screenshots from the article, but it was so underappreciated. I just thought that this article that I had to go through it and talk about it and read what she has to say. And if you guys want to read some books that implement her advice, then shameless plug, I have 4 different books on Amazon and Kindle down below in the description. So you guys could check out my books if you want somebody that implements this advice here. But let's see, we'll start right here with use everything in your life as fodder for your work. One of the nicest things about being a writer is that nothing ever gets wasted. A writer who is serious and economical can store away small fragments of ideas and events and conversations and even facial expressions and mannerisms and use them all someday. I believe that a story can be made out of any such small combination of circumstances, set up to best advantage and decorated with some use of the imagination. That is a great piece of advice, and that is something that I find myself doing all the time, even with little pieces of conversation from before I became a writer. You just, when you really need something and you think about it, there's always these little things you can find in your life. Maybe somebody does something a certain way, they hold a pen a certain way, and that just sticks with you. It's small things like that that you can incorporate into your story, and it makes it feel a little more real. Next is be as weird as you like and keep writing. The very nicest thing about being a writer is that you can afford to indulge yourself endlessly with oddness, and nobody can really do anything about it as long as you keep writing and kind of using it up, as it were. All you have to do, and watch this carefully please, is keep writing. As long as you write it away regularly, nothing can really hurt you. I think that's great advice. Next is keep the reader's attention by any means necessary. This is a good one. Let's see. Far and away, the greatest menace to the writer, any writer, beginning or otherwise, is the reader. The reader is, in fact, the writer's only unrelenting, genuine enemy. He has everything on his side. All he has to do, after all, is shut his eyes, and any work of fiction becomes meaningless. It is, of course, the writer's job to reach out and grab this reader. If he is a reader who cannot endure a love story, it is the writer's job, no more no less, to make him read a love story and like it. Using any device that might possibly work, the writer has to snare the reader's attention and keep it. Oh boy, that's a good one. Just always be interesting. Just don't be boring is my takeaway from that. Just give them something they'll like. Next is keep it simple. Use all your seasoning sparingly. Do not worry about making your characters shout, intone, exclaim, remark, shriek, reason, holler, or any such thing unless they are doing it for a reason. All remarks can be said. Every time you use a fancy word, your reader is going to turn his head to look at it going by, and sometimes he may not turn his head back again. That is a great one. I've done a video on this too. All remarks can be said. You don't have to say this character shouted, intoned, exclaimed, remarked, shrieked, or any of these other ones. I think if you go through all my books, they all say said, and then sometimes asked, sometimes replied, but 99% of the time it's said. Most of these other things are unnecessary because already in the context of the story, if they're exclaiming, if they're remarking, if they're shrieking, if they're reasoning, if they're hollering. So that is great advice. Let's see. Restrain your metaphors, but not your inventions. Naturally, every writer has dealt in one way or another with metaphor, and there are a few more pathetic sights than a writer hopelessly entangled in a great unwieldy metaphor that has gotten out of control and is spilling all over the story, killing off characters and snapping sentences right and left. Huge metaphors, such as this one, is far better left to people with a lot more time and space to write. Adjectives are always good, of course. No short story really ought to be without adjectives, particularly odd ones such as fulsome, that the reader usually has to go and look up, and of course adverbs such as unworthily, even if you have to make them up, are always very useful. Oh, and this next one's my favorite one. You can't write dialogue if you don't know how people talk and think. Listen Always to people talking. Listen to patterns of thinking displayed in talking. Think about this. If a husband comes home at night and says to his wife, "What do you think happened to me? When I got onto the bus tonight, I sat down next to a girl, and when the conductor came along, he had a live penguin riding on his head. A live penguin, can you imagine? And when I looked at it, it turned out it was a talking penguin, and it said, 'Tickets, please.' And there was this guy across the aisle, and you really wouldn't believe this, but it turned out he had a parrot in his pocket, and the parrot put out his head, and he and the penguin got to talking, and I never heard anything like it in all my life." Don't you know that after the husband has said all this, his wife is going to say, "What did the girl look like?" That's my favorite one. Count on your commonality. Many experiences in life are common to all of us, and a word or two is frequently enough to enrich a story with a wealth of recollection. Take, for instance, the words income tax. Next is don't be obtuse. Do not try to puzzle your reader unnecessarily. A puzzled reader is an antagonistic reader. Do not expect him to guess why a character does something or how it happens that some remark is made. It may be that you want him to stop and wonder for a minute. If so, make it perfectly clear that everything is going to be all right later on. That's a good one. Don't try and puzzle your readers. This is another good one right here. These are all good. I know I keep saying, "Oh, this is a good one, this is a good one." They're all good. But next is always be writing. I cannot find any patience for those people who believe that you start writing when you sit down at your desk and pick up your pen and finish writing when you put down your pen again. A writer is always writing, seeing everything through a thin mist of words, fitting swift little descriptions to everything he sees, always noticing. Just as I believe that a painter cannot sit down to his morning coffee without noticing what color it is, so a writer cannot see an odd little gesture without putting a verbal description to it, and ought never to let a moment go by undescribed. And the final one, this one sort of reminds me of the other one up there that's pretty much saying don't be boring, but this one says, above all else, always be interesting. Here is one of the greatest pitfalls for beginning or inexperienced writers. Their stories are, far too often, just simply not very interesting. It is easy to be trapped in a story you are writing, and to suppose that the interest you feel yourself is in the story is automatically communicated to the reader. This is terribly important to me, the writer tells himself. This is a matter of the most extreme importance to me, and therefore a reader will find it important too, and the reader, opening one sleepy eye, thinks that the fellow who wrote this thing was certainly pretty worked up about something, wasn't he? Funny how hard it is to stay awake while you are reading it. And that's the end of the article. Let me know down in the comments which of these pieces of advice you like the most. My favorite one is the one about the dialogue right here, where the guy says he sat down next to the girl on the train, and then two people had talking birds, and then it ends with the wife asking, "What did the girl look like?" That is my favorite one right here. And like I said, if you guys want to get my books, I have 4 different books on Amazon. I have The Eclipse Theater, which is a short story collection. I have my novel Eternity, which is a horror novel, its sequel, Inner Demons, and my horror comedy Duality. So my 4 books are on Amazon and Kindle down below in the description. Have a fantastic day, everybody.